John Locke was born in 1632 in the small southwestern English village of Rington. His father, also named John, was a legal clerk who served with the parliamentarians during the English Civil War. Locke studied at the Westminster School in London as a teenager, then Oxford University, where he remained until 1667. In Oxford, Locke wrote Questions Concerning the Laws of Nature, which was a compilation of 8 separate lectures and was untitled and unpublished in his life. Locke pursued the study of medicine and natural philosophy, what we call science today. He also undertook training and education to become a physician. Locke moved to London in 1667, where he became a member of the Royal Society of Physicians. There, he began writing his Essay Concerning Human Understanding, with the earliest drafts dating to 1671. This particular work took Locke almost 20 years to publish. The understanding, like the eye, whilst it makes us see and perceive all other things, takes no notice of itself, and it requires arts and pains to see it at a distance and make it its own object. John Locke, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding. Locke traveled to France in 1675, fleeing political strife, returning to England in 1679 upon the brief return of his political patrons, but fleeing again in 1683 for the Netherlands. It was here he would pen his most famous work, the 2 treatises on civil government. The state of nature has a law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone, and reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind who will but consult it, that being equal and independent. No one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions. The end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom for all the states of created beings capable of laws. Where there is no law, there is no freedom. John Locke, 2 treatises on civil government. One of the most influential of Locke's ideas was that of the social contract, which, despite being initially proposed in Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan in 1651, Locke had a very different notion of. Hobbes believed the state of nature to be chaotic, and the social contract was created to put an end to that chaos. This means that even a tyrannical king acts in the will of the people for simply keeping society from descending back into the chaotic state of nature. However, Locke believed the state of nature was that where people lived in absolute freedom, arguing that we gain civil rights in exchange for respecting the rights of others, giving up some freedoms in order to do so. Locke also believed that should a king fail to uphold the social contract, the people have what is known as the right to revolution. This has been used to justify the American, French, and Haitian revolutions. Locke also proposed a right that all people are born with certain unalienable rights, known as natural rights. These are the rights to life, liberty, and property. Thomas Jefferson wrote them into the American Constitution as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These rights should be guaranteed by a social contract, and any infringement upon these rights is considered by Locke to be tyranny. In the second treatise, Locke attempts to figure out the role of government. What makes a good, legitimate government, and what makes a government illegitimate? Political power, then, I take to be a right of making laws with penalties of death, and consequently all less penalties, for the regulating and preserving of property, and the employing the force of the community in the execution of such laws, and in the defense of the commonwealth from foreign injury, and all this only for the public good. John Locke, 2nd Treatise on Civil Government. The only defense against the world is a thorough knowledge of it. John Locke, Some Thoughts Concerning Education. Locke believed in education through three methods: the development of a healthy body, the formation of virtue in one's character, and the choice of a suitable curriculum. Later in his life, Locke dedicated his attention to theological studies. In 1695, Locke penned The Reasonableness of Christianity, which he published anonymously. This work was considered controversial because in it Locke argued that many practices deemed mandatory by Christians were unnecessary. Locke suffered from many ailments during his life. In 1704, his health began to take a turn for the worst. John Locke, father of the Enlightenment, died on October 28, 1704. He is buried in the churchyard of a small village called High Lever in Essex, England. Locke's essay on human understanding and the two treatises on civil government laid the foundation for much of the English and European philosophy that followed him. From Jefferson quoting Locke in the Constitution to Rousseau writing on the social contract and education in the mid-18th century, to the Third Estate of the French Estates General meeting in a tennis court to pen the Declaration of Rights of Man. Locke's influence can be seen everywhere in history.